Good evening. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by two former United Academy products this week, which is great considering, first of all, the sheer disastrous nature of me being able to schedule these podcasts, and then the other side of it is just Phil, Lee, and I have never been able to, for about 2 months, to be able to convene diaries to all be able to be free at 7 o'clock on a Friday night. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Phil Marsh and Lee Lawrence. Phil, how are you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, all good, Wayne. Had a couple of weeks off, Easter holidays for me, so just been keeping myself busy with some of the coaching that I do. But yeah, just having a bit of downtime as well with the kids and the family. So all good, mate, from my end.
Good. Lee, how are you doing?
Brilliant, mate. Thank you. I'd say it's been a long time coming. Going back on the podcast, I've had a good few weeks now since we've been on. Fresh off a nice trip away to see family in Spain, who, believe it or not, are absolutely football mad. So all I had for a good week was Uncle Lee come and play football. Uncle Lee come and play football. So that was my holiday for a week. But
Nice.
secretly, I loved it, mate. So I'm not complaining. Like I say, I'm back fresh and back into work. So yeah, everything's good my side, mate.
Normally, when you come out of retirement, you pick up some kind of injury. What's the physio room like in the Lawrence household? You all right?
Yeah, a bit of a sore back, knee's gone. It's just like being back with United when I was 21, to be honest. But
Some things never change, Lee.
Some things never change, mate. 38 in an 83-year-old's body.
Well, yeah, let's before we start about talk about United today, we talk about something never changed, Phil. You actually recently went to Carrington, back to visit to give a talk about your experiences there, and if anyone is unaware of why that's significant, why Phil would be asked back, I'm not going to ask Phil to justify himself. Just look up his story. You can type it in, and details are available online, basically. Phil, how was it going back?
Yeah, it was great. As I say, it was a bit of a weird one, really. I just got a phone call randomly, the middle of week just gone, just off one of my old coaches and people at the club, Dave Bushell, just asking me really to see what my diary was like and whether I could go in and just do a bit of a chat with some of the academy players and reserve players. People who don't know a little bit about, obviously, the crash that I was involved in whilst I was at the club. That was sort of the gist of why they wanted me to go in, really, and just sort of, give a bit of a background on what happened to me. And, because I was sort of similarly sat in the position they're in at the moment. And, obviously things could have gone a lot worse. And they just wanted me to share my story, really, with some of them. I think there's been a few complaints about some of the younger players with leaving the training ground in terms of, speeding, not being sensible. There's been a couple of incidents where lads have had little bumps and stuff. So I think they just wanted to sort of, give them a little bit of a reminder of sort of what can go wrong and what can happen. Especially, being young professional footballers, some of them are driving into work with, 2 or 3 lads in a car. And if the worst was to happen, that's 2 or 3 lads that are, in danger of, A, losing the lives, but, B, having the knock-on effect of what happens. It's not just the lads involved, it's, the people at the club, the families, all the sort of bad media that would surround the club. So it was just a good sort of day, really, to go in and have a chat and speak to some of the lads. It went really well. As I said to you, Wayne, last night I spoke to you at the game. It couldn't have gone much better for me. I was quite nervous, really, because I've never done anything like that before. I've spoken openly about, the crash, and, when people ask me about it, I don't, mind speaking about it. But obviously going back into the club and speaking to, a room full of probably about 50, 100 people, it was quite daunting. But as I say, it went really well. I think it struck a chord with a lot of the players. The coaches were all made up with the way it went, and they've asked me to go back in again when I'm next available to do it with some of the first team players. Obviously, some of the younger first team players, your Garnachos and people like that, because I think they obviously missed out on that one because he wasn't there. But they want them to, hear that kind of thing as well with, the money that they're going to be on and all the stuff that comes with it. I think they just want that to, be a little reminder that, you need to keep your feet firmly on the ground and, focus on what the main objective is, and that's the football side of things.
So I made up for you, mate. I've got to say as well, you I've known you a long time, a fairly long time, about a decade or so, maybe a little bit longer. And your story, I think for a long time you just sort of lived with it as your life, and I think maybe the last sort of 5 or 6 years you've sort of realized. Now you wouldn't say it, you wouldn't say that it'd be an inspiring thing, but I think it's an inspiring thing, and I think that you've become a little bit more comfortable with talking about it in that kind of aspect, and I do think it's a valuable thing for the club. A valuable resource really for the club to call upon, because it is something that grounds every generation of young players that come through. So it'll always be advice that is welcome as long as you're around to give it. So no, I made up. I think that I made up for you, but I think it's a good thing for the club as well. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I think just touching back on that, I think when I was in there, I think you could see some of the lads' faces with. I did sort of a little PowerPoint. Just a couple of slides, it wasn't anything long. It was just a 10-15 minute chat. I had a couple of PowerPoints and slides, a little bit of background on myself, and just to let them know that obviously I was in the same situation that they're in. And then just to see some of the pictures of the actual car and the crash, and a bit of background on what happened. I think it was sort of quite powerful, really. And as I say, all the coaches were really happy with the way it went, and the reaction from some of the lads was quite good. So I'm hoping that that's a little bit of a kick up the backside for some of them, and just a little bit of a reminder of things like that can happen if you are not doing what you're supposed to be, and maybe messing around and being a little bit naive. And especially nowadays with the money and the way it's gone, these kind of things are at people's disposal a lot more. That they've got access to buying supercars and having really fast cars. When you're only young, you are a little bit more inclined to push the boundaries and be a little bit more naive. So hopefully that'll go down well, and there's no obviously incidents with any of the players, because that's the last thing we want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of comments coming in. Dan says, invaluable to be able to tell that story, Phil. These kids are given money to spend on fast cars from an early age. That story is usually important for all academy kids to hear. And James says, great news, Phil. A life coach for young players is a smart idea. And I think, yeah, like I was saying earlier, a smart move by the club, not just Phil. Like we talk about, I know Phil probably a little bit more high profile because of the nature of the incident and the number of sort of high profile prospects at the time that the incident involved. But Lee, we've talked about you as well, like your sort of persistency coming back from injuries. I think it's good, like the club are tapping into these kind of resources, isn't it? They're not like, it's not like they're discarding people once they're gone, they're forgotten, they're bringing them back. And I'm not saying necessarily you'll be down next week to talk about, coming up, fighting repeated setbacks, but it is that kind of open door kind of thing with the club, isn't it? Like we've been back to former play dinners, and everyone is like a family there, and it's no surprise really that they welcome Phil back.
No, it's well needed. When I heard that Phil was going back, I was made up, like I say, not just for Phil, but basically made up for the club. It's way overdue. We've mentioned it years down the line on the cast about the attitude of the young players, not even just at United, but like we said in the past, overall, professional young lads now. We thought we was on decent money, at 18, 19-year-olds. And I remember the crash like it was yesterday. I remember it was Mads, Phil, Callum won it. And the type of cars we were talking, was it a Mitsubishi, a Golf,
Civic,
a Civic, on the type of Civic, all fast cars. But look at them cars compared to the cars what the 18, 19-year-old lads are gonna be whizzing down Camington Lane in today. You know what I mean? Boys will be boys at the end of the day. They're gonna get a lot of money at a young age, and unfortunately, it's going to happen. But obviously, bringing a story like Phil's into Carrington. And like Phil just said, doing the slide and showing them, how close to disaster it actually was. I mean, we all felt sick. Like I said, I remember it like it was yesterday, and we couldn't believe what had happened. And it opened all, because bear in mind, we all had decent cars. I had a nice car at that age. I used to set off down Camington Lane, and believe me, when that happened, that all stopped. It all stopped in an instant. And like I say, that's what 20 plus years ago now, something along those lines, is it, Phil?
Yeah.
So that message has probably got lost a little bit. So it'll do the lads well to listen to that story and to ground them a little. So yeah, it's a good thing all around, really.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about first team football. Manchester United 2, Sevilla 2. At one point, 2-0 up. Sabitzer scores 2 goals. Looks like it could be one of those nights, like, because obviously we had the goal disallowed in the first minute as well. You're thinking could be something like Roma here, you know, like not maybe the 7-1, but the 6-2 that we had against them in the Europa. Do you know what I mean? It really looked like we were going to pile a few goals in. And I admit I got a little bit carried away watching that, thinking, God, 2-0 here. And I think I'd had a couple of conversations with friends before the game, and we were saying, well, it's not the Sevilla of old. You know, it's not the same team that we've played against, so no need to be afraid so much. But then around like the 35-minute mark, you sort of I don't know about this. Maybe I'm being too generous to our team and the manager because it's such a mixed last hour. I mean, first of all, I felt like there were 2 calls on Wan-Bissaka and Casemiro that the referee didn't give, which sort of disrupted the flow a bit, and it sort of brought a little bit of bite into the game. And maybe that's what Sevilla wanted because it brought it. It was a bit of a leveler and added some spice to it. But I feel like the referee has a responsibility to sort of draw a line in what he accepts and what he doesn't accept. And he books Bruno for handball. Varane comes off at half time. Around the hour mark, then Ten Hag brings off Bruno, Martial, and Sancho at the same time. A little bit later, he brings off Antony. So you're thinking, all right, from an attacking point of view, United are done. Because there was one moment where Vegas gets the ball in the 6-yard box. He doesn't know what to do with it. I mean, I'm not criticising him, but he's obviously struggled for goal-scoring confidence. But that, if anything, summed up how United were going to end that game. That was the moment. But then it all sort of fell apart when Martinez gets the injury. Malacia on goal. I don't know whether I'm comfortable blaming him for it. Likewise, Maguire. Because I think those things can happen. But there is a truism in there that when you bring Harry Maguire on, changes the way that you're going to defend, and it takes it 5-6 yards deeper. And maybe United should have been doing that anyway because it was a 2-0 lead in Europe and you're going to be conservative. But, you know, it seemed like one of those things that from the half-hour mark, everything that could go wrong sort of went against United. Lee, what did you make of it? I mean, at one point looked like, you know, everything was rosy in the garden.
It's that last. I still beg believe that last 20 minutes. What happened? I was so confident, especially in the first half and leading into the second half. Although we didn't particularly perform well in the second half, I just didn't envisage them scoring a goal against us. I thought we was going to be comfortable all the way through. I thought in the first half it was the much better team, composure on the ball. Martial, did some fantastic hold-up play and set the goals up and the assist. Everything was going well. Like I said, I didn't think nothing bad at all was going to happen. And then, like I said, we had some really bad luck with the injuries, what we've got sustained. Ten Hag made, like I say, quite a few substitutions quite early on, which again affected the last 10 minutes because we played effectively the last 10 minutes with 10 men when they were trying to get something out of the game. And like I say, the goals, I mean, I blame more Malacia for the first goal than I would do for Maguire for the second. I think the Maguire, the guy who headed the ball, it was 20 yards going the opposite direction to goal, and it just hit his head and gone in. That could have happened to anyone. I think more Malacia was at stake for the first goal because I think as a defensive point of view, and that ball come over the top, his positional awareness was bad. He wasn't aware that someone was behind him, so he was going to leave it to run out, I think. Again, absolute freak of nature that it goes and hits him and goes in the top corner. But if his positional sense would have been a little bit more, more up to scratch, that wouldn't have happened. They would have brought that ball down and cleared it, and we would have got and cleared our lines. I suppose it's just one of them days at the office. A lot of bad luck in the second half, a hell of a lot of bad luck. But we should be killing them games off. We were so comfortable in that first half. I would have just liked to see us gone for it, like we've mentioned just before the podcast. I would have loved to have, the first half killed them off 3 or 4, and then maybe tried not sat back on a 2-0 lead. Phil will tell you in football, a 2-0 lead for me, is the worst lead you can have, the worst lead in the world, especially early doors, because you can get complacent and then they get one back and they've got all the momentum going forward. So, like I say, it's a bad day at the office, but I think we've definitely got enough in the tank and the locker in the second game to what I seen in the first to kill the tie off over in Seville.
Yeah, Dan, great question. Before I ask it to the lads, just qualify what you meant by the pitch. So I'm not putting words into your mouth with that. Phil, yeah, we were talking. So Phil and I were sat like one block apart. I went down to see him at half time, and I'm like, "Oh, what do you think?" Phil's young girls were there, and they were more on the ball than what we were because they were predicting a Sevilla comeback, and they did come back into it. We were talking and we were saying like, well, I said I thought those calls were a bit dodgy, but we played well up until that point. And yeah, like they said, everything that seemed to go wrong in the second, well, everything that could go wrong seemed to go wrong. Anthony hits the bar as well. And you just think if that or the Vegas or Malacia chance goes in, if Vegas got a little bit more conviction, 3-0, even with Varane out, it seems like a very comfortable situation for United to navigate the next week or so. Now you're looking possibly at Lindelof and Shaw. I mean, we'll talk about that, a little bit later on. But I mean, what kind of sense did you make out of what happened in the second half?
Yeah, I mean, the game itself. When I look back at all the incidents and all the things that happened during the game, it's unbelievable, really. The amount of things that happen where something could have happened and the game could have been completely different. The injuries, the refereeing decisions, it was a totally freak of a nature game, really. As I said, I think first half very comfortable. Sevilla didn't really cause us any problems. Probably could have gone a little bit more and tried to kill the tie in that first half, get 3-4 goals. But 2-0 at half time, you're happy with that, you're coasting, and then when you make a couple of mistakes or a couple of substitutions, I think second half we sort of just played a little bit into their hands. I said it just off air then. I think second half we sort of seemed to be sitting back and not really going for that third and fourth goal to kill the tie, where I think it was there for the taking. They didn't look like they was going to score in a month of Sundays for me last night up until that last 10-15 minutes where we've made that error by Malacia and they've got the goal and then they get the tails up. But yeah, it's a difficult game to sort of analyse, really, because there's that many things that happened. You've got the Casemiro possible red card, the Bruno yellow card. Now he can't play in the next game. Varane's injured. Martinez is injured. Subs coming on, not having an impact on the game. Sancho didn't play well. He looked completely, shot of confidence. Like he looked like Rashford did last year for me last night. Body language was poor. Didn't want to chase back. Making wrong decisions, getting in positions and making the wrong pass or trying to dribble when the pass is there. And I think we went from having a really good opportunity and, as you said, killing the tie off, having a nice steady week, having the tie sort of dead and buried, to now it's 2-2. We've got loads of players missing. We've got players coming back from injuries who's going to maybe have to get thrown in, players who's not been playing regular football, who's going to have to come in and step up. Whereas for me, I don't think we have got the squad of, your cities and teams like that who have, got that real quality and in-depth where they can, afford to miss 2 or 3 players and still have the same performance levels. So for me, it's gone from, being a really comfortable, trip into the semis now to being a real, it's going to be, over there, they're going to have a really hostile atmosphere. They're going to try and, make it hard as they can. And we've got a real task on our hand. I think I still believe we've got enough quality, with all them players missing, we've just mentioned, to get ourselves through this tie, because we've shown in the first half last night that we're a far better team. And this isn't a Sevilla team of previous years, who were doing really well. The 13th, I think, in La Liga. So they're not doing very well, and we should be going over there, with confidence that we can still win the game. I just think we missed a trick really last night with a few things, and obviously, we didn't get the rub of the green with certain things, but Malacia mistake there has just completely capitulated the last 10 minutes, and I think once they get that goal, Martinez's injury, and just you could feel the sort of the tide change, and it was just a matter of 2-1 is probably still not a bad result. 2-2 now. It's sort of, you know, a little bit more in the balance.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, to take the little bit of confidence or positivity away from it, that the away goals rule doesn't count, and United they've generally done all right away from home in the competition. Generally, I would say, and in the last, well, not the against Barcelona at least, Shaw played at centre back in the new camp, and if you're going to be asking him to do the same kind of thing. So yeah, a couple of comments coming in. I'll get to them, all the comments in a moment. I do want to just hook back to the substitutes like we were talking about. Bruno has come off, Martial's come off, Sancho's come off. Now Ten Hag's talked about the reasons for why he did that. Warned, and he was warned about Anthony apparently as well, that Bruno and Anthony could get second yellows and be sent off by the referee. Martial isn't supposed to be playing full games of football yet, which, you know, don't want to rush him or anything. It's only been 8 years at the club. Baby steps. And Sancho, you would presume for performance reasons. Looking at the comments, what Ten Hag said, I mean, I would then put the finger at the referee saying, why have you lost control of the game so much? Because it wasn't that angry. You could see, don't get me wrong, like Bruno's going to kick off. Then if he's going to kick off, then yeah, have that word. But it wasn't the kind of game that should have been like that. And I think the referee's inaction on some counts sort of led to that situation. Because, I mean, United have been in too many positions since the turn of the year where a referee has not had proper control of the game, and United players being hurt, and you're only like one move away from someone being really hurt. So that kind of thing, you know, I'm not really too frustrated with him about. Although I did think it was a bit early, an hour to be making 3 substitutes, because it's like you are inviting that change of momentum with that. Sancho, though, Phil, you did want to bring him back, and we were talking about him just before. He had a spell out. He was brought back in. He looked fairly bright. He actually looked all right against Everton at the weekend, but he's having peaks and troughs. He's looking quite decent, but then like fairly anonymous. And last night was one of those bad nights. What do you make of it? Because I mean, it was disappointing again.
Yeah, I think, as you say, you know, since he's came back, he has had a little bit of an indifferent sort of level of performance from one week to the next, and he's not really got any consistency. And I think that's from the very first moment that we signed him. We've not seen that consistency. We've seen, you know, moments of brilliance and other times where he's been, you know, bang average or below par. I think last night he was really poor. I think his decision making wasn't great. I think, especially in the second half, his attitude was really bad. His body language wasn't great. He didn't seem to be working hard, which, you know, you can't really sort of usually fault him for that. I think he always usually works quite hard. But yes, I think, you know, I touched on just before we came on here about there was a point in the game yesterday where the fullback actually got the ball in the right back position, and he drove from the right back position all the way over the halfway line and nearly into our box without anyone putting a tackle in. And I think Sancho was sort of chasing him and he just gave up. And I was like, you can't get, like, you know, any level of football, you can't just let someone run past you and not even work back and chase back. It was mad. And you know, then had a knock-on effect, because I think the next 2 or 3 times he got the ball, he slipped and then he gave the ball away. And then, you know, he's throwing his arms around trying to pass the blame onto someone else. And I think when you're sort of in that mindset, and I think that at the moment he's definitely lacking confidence. I said, as you know, he reminded me of like Rashford last year, where his body language was awful, making so many wrong decisions. When he should dribble, he's passing, and you know, when he should pass, he's dribbling and running into blind alleys. And I think at the moment it might be I mean, we are struggling in terms of injuries and stuff, but for me, I think he maybe needs like a little rest out the team just to sort of, you know, gather his thoughts and just make sure his head's fully on it, because at the moment we can't afford to carry players. And yesterday we were sort of carrying him a little bit in the second half for a period of the game. And I think, you know, I've seen Bruno at one point in the game actually like shouting over to him to sort of like try and deal him up. He just turned away. You know, you can see that he weren't mentally in the right frame of mind for that yesterday. So it's going to be a difficult one. I think he maybe just needs a little rest out of the team, but whether we can afford to do that with all these injuries is going to be interesting. So
I think the problem with resting him, Phil, I've just been listening there, and I totally agree. He had a stinker last night. I didn't think he played well at all, and I agree with Wayne. I think when he did the simple things against Everton, he did them well. It seems that when he keeps it simple and he plays himself, it well into a game, but when he's trying to take someone on or dribble past someone, it seems like he's completely lost the confidence to do that now. I suppose, like say, if they do drop in and if it is a confidence issue, which I'm presuming that's what we're thinking it is, because we all seen what he could do at Dortmund. If they do drop in, is his confidence going to go right low again? But as you say, it's if they don't, it means that we're predominantly carrying a play and playing with 10.5 men instead of 11 men. You know what I mean?
I think you're right, Lee, in that respect. I think it's a difficult one because, as you say, we don't want to drop him and then confidence go completely through the floorboard. But then on the flip side, I think at this moment in time, he's not quite giving us anything in the game. I want to see Sancho driving at players, creating chances, whipping balls in, getting shots off. And yesterday, I don't think he other than that goal in the first few seconds, he sort of had a shot on goal or did anything. And I think for a winger with so much money, playing on a night like that in front of kind of crowd, that's could be.
The way I look at it, you look at Anthony now, even at the beginning of the season when we was all umming and ahhing about him, and bear in mind, I think Anthony's coming into his own now and he's becoming an important part of the team. But even when we was all a bit undecided, not so long ago, the thing is, he still worked hard, didn't he? If you remember, he was still up and down that pitch, and even when things weren't going his way, he was working hard for the ball. You don't see that with Sancho, and like you say, it's criminal. If you're having a bad game, work hard for the team, do something for the team. Don't just be a passenger. The only thing I can see is if they do drop him, what would you say? What options have we got? Do you just start Martial wide and bring Weghorst up front again, or it's a difficult one because we've not got the luxury of Garnacho there now. Do you stick Bruno wide, play Sabitzer and Casemiro in there,
They've not really given They've not really given Palestra. I mean, I know he's only a young kid, but for me, every time I've seen him come on, he's had an impact on the game.
He's only started him once, hasn't he? I think he's only had one start, if I can remember rightly.
Yeah. I mean, he is only young, but for me, he's having an impact on the game when he's involved. So maybe give him a chance and see how he gets on. I think he played him in the Europa League, didn't he?
When he's played, like I say, he's done very well. He's not looked out of place whatsoever, and he's looked well.
I don't think we've got anything to lose by doing that because at the end of the day, he's going to work hard. He's hungry. He's a young lad. He's ambitious. He seems to have an impact on the game. At the minute, with what Sancho's offering, it's not a big gamble for me. I'm just saying, you're in, mate, and let's see what you can
do. Yeah, the only issue with that, like Helen says, play Palestra. The only issue that I've got with that is, like Anthony plays on that side, and he's fine. Do you know what I mean? And I don't, I haven't seen enough of Palestra to say I'm confident that he could go to the left or that I'd be completely comfortable. Like Anthony goes to the left, even though he's so left-footed. A little note about the substitutes. If not for Elanga coming on, United's record of playing an academy product would have ended 80 years or something like that. It would have ended if Elanga hadn't come on. But about the subs, Lee, just to get your point on them overall, what did you think of that? Are you critical of Ten Hag for making the changes too early, or do you see why he did it?
I see the points. I get his points. I listened to his post-match interview, and I get why he did it. I just think that he should have probably put a little bit more faith into Anthony and Fernandes to have a bit more self-discipline. Have a quiet word and just tell them to calm down. Like I say, it's 60 minutes in, making 3 subs, and then, like I say, a couple of injuries down the line, and we're playing with 10 men for the last 10 minutes. A bit early for me. I mean, bear in mind, if he'd been warned off the referee about Anthony or Fernandes and they got sent off, then we would have been all saying, why didn't he take him off sooner and replace him? So it's a double-edged knife at the moment with it. But in my opinion, I just think it was a little bit hasty, and I think he should have put more trust into the lads to have a bit more self-discipline, Paul.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm in United. To be fair, been inconsistent with how that's worked out. A question from Dan. He clarified what he said about the pitch. He thought the pitch played a part in the performance. Some players appeared to deal with it better than others. Is it something that players talk about during a game or before it? Because Malacia seemed to struggle, and what Dan means by that is the pitch was extremely wet, so the ball seemed to move really fast, and Malacia didn't seem to be in tune to that. Phil, what did you make of it? Obviously, it wasn't really raining beforehand, so it wasn't like it was a massively greasy pitch. Obviously, they do wet the pitch, and it'd be raining on and off through the day, but. It's a point because they did seem a little bit like there was some over it passes, but I didn't know if it was a particularly bad pitch last night.
Yeah, no, I mean for me, and I think Lee would probably back me up on this. I think as a professional footballer, you want the pitch being a bit of grease on it because you want to zip the ball around as fast as you can. You know, all the players should have, a good touch, should be in tune with playing on fast pitches because I'm sure they do that at the training ground as well to get them used to moving the ball quickly. And for me, I used to love playing on pitches that had a bit of zip on it because, there's nothing better.
There's nothing worse than a dry pitch when the ball rolls up and you kick it. Is there nothing worse at all than a dry pitch?
And especially, when you play the way we do and you move the ball around quickly and you want to switch the play and get people on the ball, they do that for a reason. And I think, we see in the sprinklers on second half, the half that we was kicking into because they want us to have that little bit of an edge and a little bit of advantage of moving the ball quick. And, if players can't deal with, a greasy surface, then, they're in the wrong sport because, the pitches that we play on nowadays, especially at the Premier League level, there's no excuses for, bad pitches or bad touches or whatever because the players should be in tune with this training every day on immaculate surfaces. And for me, it's the best style of football, when, as Lee just said, when it's dry or, it's not quite got that zip on it, that's when you could maybe give a little bit of a, I can understand there how, the ball's not quite moving as fluently as you'd like it. But last night, the pitch looked in immaculate condition. I thought, that was a great surface to play football. And I think at times we moved the ball really well. Malacia did. I was talking to my father-in-law last night, and I think Malacia did struggle last night a little bit. I think he just sort of. I wouldn't necessarily say it was his touch and stuff. I just think sometimes he sort of his decision making and he sometimes dwells on the ball a little bit much, and people sort of catch him out a little bit. But I think that just comes down to not playing regular football. He's not really had a look in for a while with Shaw playing at left back, and he's been thrown in now. Obviously, with Shaw being injured, he just looks a little bit rusty, and sometimes his decision making's not quite there. But again, that just comes with playing regular games. I wouldn't, blame the pitch at all last night for anyone's sort of performance level. I just think. Sometimes that can happen when you're playing on a greasy pitch. You can hit over it a pass because you want to get it there as quick as you can. So you might have, you might put a little bit extra on it at times to try and get it there, and it just zips away. But, that's been done by the manager for a reason because he's got trust and belief in the players that they can deal with that, and they think that's the best way forward.
Yeah. Commenting from Hella, she says, "I'm way more worried about the injuries than the result. Really cried when Martinez was carried off. I've been saying for a long time he should be allowed to sub an injury. Some players will keep going and make an injury much worse. Still waiting for confirmation of what the Martinez thing is, but obviously a massive blow. You expect he's going to miss most of the rest of the season. With that in mind, presuming Varane will miss, presuming Rashford's going to miss it, we know Fernandes is definitely out. Lee, what do you reckon he's going to do next week? Do you reckon he's going to stick with the likes of Vegos, the ones who he's been sort of, I don't want to say flogging, but the ones who've been playing so much, or do you think he'd be looking to try and spring some kind of tactical surprise out there?
It's an hard one, mate. I've been making my brains all day about it. What's he going to do, not just for the Forest match, but also for the semi-final and next week going back to Seville. We've got that many injuries and suspensions and this, that, and the other. It's hard to tell what he's going to do. I think he'll probably stick with the same squad. What he's put his faith in for the rest of the most of the season. He'll probably stick with Weghorst, like I say, Martial's still 8 years in and still not fit enough to play 90 minutes. So we're going to be struggling there for a centre forward. Rashford doesn't look like he's going to be available in the next few weeks. Obviously, we've short a list. We've got Varane, Rashford, Garnacho, Martinez. With a list of key players now, we're going to be struggling. And I agree with Hel, that she's completely right. The injuries sustained last night is a mega blow to for the rest of our season. It could be the reason why we don't get top four. It could be the reason why we don't qualify into the semi-finals. And like I say, I think Martinez, for me, I think that's the worst out of the lot. Not just because it looks like a bad injury, but he's been so good this year and so consistently good. For me, is my number one player on that team sheet every day. He's going to be an absolute massive miss. I just hope that it's not as serious as it originally first looked. But as for a team, as for what team he's going to pick, I think it's anyone's guess, mate. I think he could do a number of things. It could change personnel. It could stick with the same personnel. But I've got all my faith in Ten Hag. I've put my faith in him all season, and I'm keeping everything crossed that he comes up with the goods.
Yeah. Dave, up until the 80th minute, we were dead. Malacia scores that chance, it's all over. United was so close to having a full first 11. The first 45 shows how good we are. Easy 2-0. That's the thing, isn't it? We were Rashford off having that 11, and if Rashford comes back, that was an essential defence out just after we've got Casemiro and Eriksen back. It's just United's luck with injuries. The second half of the season has been rough. Dan says Vegas works hard, but I'll be honest, stick Barton up top, as I know he would work just as hard, and rumours of a better touch. Well, I hope you talk about my nephew, because I've got tendon damage in my ankle, so I'm on the injury list myself, Dan. That's how lucky we are. Even I'm injured. Yeah, Phil, how do you reckon Ten Hag's going to take the second leg? He has sprung some tactical surprises, like against Everton, he played Fernandes deeper in the midfield. He's not going to have to, well, he can't do that with Fernandes this time round, but he's going to have to find some kind of creative outlet. I mean, he could look for pace, just hit it, and look for pace in whoever we've got available. We know Martial's quick. Anthony's looking a little bit quicker than their fullbacks, which is a good sign. What do you reckon he's going to do?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, obviously, defensively, if Luke Shaw's back, he's proved that he can do a job at centre half. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in there with Lindelof. I think the midfield, you're probably looking at maybe Eriksen coming back in to have that little creative player in there with maybe Fred and Casemiro. And then, I think, the front three, you're looking out of the options. It's going to be, probably, Anthony, possibly Palestri. I mentioned him then, whether he throws him in or not is yet to be seen. But for me, I think at the moment, with where Sancho was yesterday, he could be a potential wild card there in that maybe wide position. And then, Martial played well yesterday. I think he set a goal up, and his hold-up play was really good. It's just trying to get him up to speed as quick as we can, because we're going to probably need him now for, the run-in with all these big games that we've got coming up. And obviously Rashford not being fully fit, it's going to be, we're going to need all the players really who are available at this moment in time. But it's going to be difficult because we've got so many big players missing now. Martinez is such a big blow. As Lee said, he's probably, the most influential player we've got, I think, in terms of his leadership on the pitch and his attitude, and just the sort of, the way he rubs off on other players with his desire and the sort of attitude that he's got is, he's irreplaceable really for me. So he's going to be a massive loss. It's going to be difficult, but hopefully we can just about get through this next tie in Seville, and a few players might start coming back. Rashford, hopefully. He's been probably our best player this year in terms of goals, so we need him back as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's really difficult to know how he's going to deal with it, because the good thing about Ten Hag is that he's tended to find solutions, and we've had good reactions. But when you're losing the numbers in the same way that we have been, we've it's difficult to replicate the same level of performance, and I don't want to get on Harry Maguire because I think, like, you know, I think he played all right on Saturday against Everton, and I'm not here to you guys know we've had this conversation over the season. It's all right being critical of players when they're out of form, but I'm not into bashing it. You see it on social media enough, you know. You can see when a player's not right. You don't have to sort of drum on that every time, especially when they're playing for the club. You want them to do well. You want them to do the things that you want them to correct the things that you've previously been critical of. But that's the thing as well, Lee. I mean, Ten Hag in his press conferences building up to the Forest game, he's actually called that out. Not necessarily Maguire, but the players. He's kind of said, look, it's not an excuse that some of them haven't been playing. They've all got to come in and hit the road running because that's what United demand at this moment in time. It's a good rally cry, considering that he's going to need them all on side, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no excuses. I heard that, but with Ten Hag, what he said about you know, being out of the side for a little while, and not when you get your chance, you've got to take it, and that's 100% correct. Just because you're not playing first team football, it's going to make you more hungry to actually perform and to stamp a position down for yourself when you get in there. So I don't take it as an excuse that, you know, I've not played for 3 or 4 games and he's been playing and this, that, and the other. You've got to just look at it as though, right, here's my chance and I need to take it. And if you're playing for Man United and you're in a Man United squad, you should be good enough and you should have the ability and the desire to do well enough against any team in the league or any team in Europe. You know, that's at the end of the day, we've said this so many times, we're Man United and we're getting back to our old ways now. Granted, we're definitely not the finished article. We're still a few signings off. Paul Scholes, I think, said, if we can keep Martial fit, we don't need a number 9. And again, we've been trying to keep Martial fit since he's been at the club. I think we definitely still need a number 9. You know what I mean? But with Maguire, is like I said, we don't like kicking people when they're down. Again, I thought he had a great game against Everton. I thought he did really, really well against Everton. His distribution and his positional play was, you know, it looked like he was going to play himself back in form. Yesterday was a bit of a down point for him scoring the own goal again. Again, I don't blame him whatsoever for that goal. But what we're going to see this next week or so, Maguire and Lindelof, centre back, and I'll be honest, I just don't think they can play together whatsoever. They're too slow to play with each other. There's no pace in them 2 centre backs there. Even though you've got 2 full backs playing, for me, you still need they're too similar. The styles are too similar for me as as centre backs. So it's going to be interesting, but let's see what happens. Let's see in the next few games, the next few weeks, how the partnerships and the things develop, and we can take it from there.
So let's talk about Forest. I'll come to you first, Lee, about it. It's the kind of game, and I say this completely optimistically, saying that, you know, United might be in a position where they can afford to get away with it against Forest with some of the injuries. Before I do that, I'll come to a couple of the comments. Dan says, Martinez, player of the season, a huge miss. Hella says, not Hell, that's a bit mean. Hella, we were in charge in that first half last night. I would start Shaw as a centre-back if he's fit, Eriksen, Casemiro, Sancho on the left, Wan-Bissaka, Martial. Hopefully he'll stay fit. We could still take Sevilla as they didn't score any goals. And yeah, I think Shaw Lindelof is the way that I would go. Dan says he agrees. Mauri Harry, I think he's talking about us being impressed with him against Everton. But we need Varane back for the game against Brighton. He'll be fine for Forest. Good Seville, yeah. As their lad Mitoma is likely quick, absolutely, yeah. Mitoma, one of those that you want to see at Old Trafford, really. And James says this squad needs a lot of work, ins and outs. Yeah, well, that's for sure. Lee, yeah, like I said, I'll come to you first about Forest. He has talked about making the, you know, not the big changes. Sorry, he's talked about the need for a big performance. You'd think we might feel like we could get away with it against Forest, but they're probably going to sense vulnerability now in the sense that we're going to have a few players out. Is it a game that you think we still feel confident we could take a win, or is it that stage of the season where you're thinking it's a little, you know, every squeaky bum time, basically?
Well, the last time me and you had a conversation about was I confident that we was going to win, it was the 6th. Was it the Liverpool game where I thought we was going to get a result? So I'm very dubious to even mention anything about confidence about getting a result anymore. I don't think I've been on the podcast since then. To be fair, I think I've been on the naughty list. But yeah, I still think we should have enough against Forest to with the squad that we've got, and the ability and even the confidence. I know, like I say, we should have won the other day, but we've not had a bad run of games. We've had more players than not playing well, and I think we should have enough to turn Forest over. But don't get me wrong, it's gonna be a hard game. They're fighting for everything down there. They're fighting for their lives. Like you just said, they're going to sense vulnerability with what happened the other day. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I think in my opinion, hopefully, and I hope I don't jinx it again, we should have enough to get a result there. Mike's off, Wayne.
Thanks, Lee. I'm pretty sure that it's not going to be 7-0 at least, which should be all right. But Phil, obviously, injury situation is dictating what we're going to do. Is this a game that Ten Hag can afford to play around with, looking at options for Sevilla, or is he looking at it now every game, and taking it as it comes? Even though it's only Forest, and we with a sort of rotated side, we did quite well against them at the City Ground and won quite comfortably. Can we afford to be doing that this time around?
No, I don't think we can. I don't think we can, rest on our laurels at all. I think this potentially could be one of the biggest games of the season for me. Just in the respect of, if we get beat against Forest now, that knock-on effect and the confidence that will, have could be with the games that we've got coming up. The semi-final and then obviously the second leg against Sevilla. If we get beat against Forest after the game that we had yesterday with the injuries and the way the game finished, that could have a catastrophic sort of effect now for the run into the season. Because as I say, we've got the biggest part of the season now where we've done so well all year. We've kept ourselves in the top 4. We've got to the end of the season in 3 or 4 cup finals, and we can potentially win, a couple more trophies. This moment now is where you need the momentum. You need these winning games and the players playing with confidence. Obviously, Forest are scrapping for their lives. They're going to be, well up for the game after the way we finished the game the other day and the injuries that we've got. So they know we're going to have a few players coming in, and we're not going to have maybe our strongest 11. So they could maybe smell blood. And I think this game for us is going to be a massive test of character now. I think this is where you've got to have players who want to step up to the plate and prove, yeah, I am worthy of, playing in the first team. And yeah, I should be, starting games more. I think this is potentially now where the season's going to be defined in this next 2 or 3 weeks. Because, as I said, we're going to have big players missing. We're going to need some big performances from players to, get us over the line and get us into these, potential finals that, where we want to be and we deserve, really. Because I think for the majority of this year, we've been fantastic, and the manager's turned the complete dressing room around. He's stamped his authority on it. He's changed the philosophy. He's made players who were playing really poorly last year play out of the skin. So you've got to give him massive credit. But I just don't want sort of the season to peter out now and, maybe miss out on top 4, don't quite get to another final. When looking back maybe a week or 2 ago, everyone would, be saying, right, we're going to get to the, final of the FA Cup. We should be beating Sevilla. We're definitely going to finish top 4. And I think because of, last night, I think people now are looking at it maybe thinking, things are a little bit more in the balance. But for me, as Lee said, we've still got enough quality in the squad to get a result against Forest, and hopefully a few of the lads will come back in the meantime from their injuries and just boost that squad that we've not quite got now because of last night, really, with the injuries and suspensions.
Yeah, it's a good point. I remember kind of raising my eyebrows when Ten Hag a couple of weeks ago when he said, "Oh, the season starts now," and because I don't like that mentality usually, but then you look at the reaction to last night, and you mentioned, I think Lee mentioned, Forest still have their tails up a little bit looking at the injury list and thinking they could get a result. But then, like Robbie says in the comments, hopefully Spurs don't click. The other sides will be looking at that and thinking mini season, because all they have to do is put a run together. If United are going to drop a few points, and it really puts them in a good position. Yeah, well, we will see. It's going to be a really tough few days for United. Let's hope that we're back next week talking about United winning 2 more games against Forest and against Sevilla, because I mean it's going to be a massive test. And I know we sort of mentioned jokingly about Martial and maybe even Maguire as well, and then maybe even Sancho's comments going on in the discussion today about Sancho maybe being used as leverage for a transfer. You know, it's that kind of thing you don't really know with some of this squad. Is that, are they fighting for that? Are they fighting for the futures at United? They really don't know. But this is for some of them, it's going to be the last big question that's asked about them. And hopefully we'll be back next week talking about them having given a positive answer to that for sure. If you've enjoyed the show, feel free to comment. We still do reply to the comments even after we've gone off air. If you're listening back on the audio podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review on the platform you're listening on. Thanks a lot for the conversation tonight, guys. Until next week, stay safe. Oh, by the way, as well, thanks a lot to everyone who supported the first in the United Before Fergie podcast that started on Monday. There'll be another one this Monday as well, and I think we're planning a new show on Monday evening with Harry, the host. So stay tuned for that. Really appreciate the support. Stay safe, stay well. Have a great weekend, guys. Thanks for watching and listening.